Assalamu alaikum. I hope you and your family are all well. Today I want to tell you about an incident that happened to me. This is not a made up story I heard from someone else. I experienced and realized everything myself. Not only did I feel it, but my family and I also went through a very difficult and painful time because of it. I'm warning you at the start that when you hear this incident, you will probably feel the same fear that I felt. At the beginning, let me tell you, I was born and raised in a fairly religious, devout family. Although I was born in the village, I never liked village life. From a young age, I focused on my studies and wanted to move to the city when I grew up with my own family. I talked to my parents many times about this, but they were not willing to leave the village. So from childhood, I decided to concentrate on my studies. I focused fully on studying so that I could move to the city and settle there and get married there. I received my primary education at the village school. When it was time to enter college, I chose a college in Mymensingh. Despite my parents' many objections, I stubbornly stuck to my decision and moved to Mymensingh. There I started living in a mess, boarded lodging, and continued my studies. Gradually, I finished college in the city. During this time, my visits back to the village continued. After finishing college, I earned an engineering degree from a well-known university in Dhaka. Right after graduating, I got a very good job, Alhamdulillah. After securing the job, I moved to Dhaka. I rarely went to the village while working and mostly stayed in Dhaka. There I fell in love with a girl and married her without telling my parents. When my parents found out about the marriage, they were very upset with me. Though I did not try to get their permission because I already knew they would forbid it. I really disliked staying in the village, and my family wanted me to marry someone from our own relatives. In fact, they wanted me to marry my sister-in-law's younger sister. But I already decided that I didn't want a village wedding. I wanted to stay away from the village. If anyone disliked my choice, I apologize. But I'll say that even though I was born and raised in the village, there were many things about village people I didn't like. Petty quarrels over small things, blowing up trivial matters out of pride, superstitions and belief in black magic or sorceresses. Those things were everyday life there. I never liked that environment. After getting married, I rented a house in a respectable neighborhood in Dhaka. I tried hard to get my parents to accept the marriage, but at first they wouldn't. Slowly they softened, and in the end they came to my house. My brother came with his family. I was very happy to see them. I felt peace that my parents' anger had ended. Alhamdulillah. My sister-in-law, Bhabhi, was with my brother, but she was very upset because my parents had planned my marriage with her younger sister. She neither greeted me nor responded to anything I said. Her face clearly showed resentment. My parents stayed with us for 2 days. I enjoyed taking them around the city. We visited many places, ate at restaurants. It felt like Eid for me. After 2 days at my house, they returned to the village. One night, I was in a very good mood and my wife was with me. We were talking about how my parents' anger was over. Then my wife said, "Did you see that little basket?" I asked her which one. She said the small basket where she keeps her hair. My wife had a habit. Whenever she brushed for hair, she collected the fallen hairs and kept them in a small trash basket. When it filled, she would burn those hairs. She was brushing while sitting on the bed, but she couldn't find that little basket. I don't know who told her this ritual that you should always collect broken or fallen hair in a separate basket. When it fills, you burn it. I had once asked her why she did that. She said she didn't know the reason, but her mother had told her never to leave cut or fallen hair lying around. Because of this, my wife took it very seriously and became very anxious when she couldn't find the basket. I assured her that maybe my mother had seen so much hair in the basket and thrown it out, or the kids might have taken it while playing. My brother's children used to come play in our room. I tried to comfort her, but she kept arguing that the kids would never do anything with her hair. I said no more and went to sleep, forgetting the matter. My parents had gone about a week. Suddenly my wife became very sick and had a high fever. I was at the office and she didn't call me. When I returned home that night, she was burning up with fever. I measured it, it was about 103 degrees Fahrenheit. I told her we must go to the doctor, but she said she had taken medicine and would be fine soon. She then closed her eyes and lay down. I was making soup for her when I heard a sound from the room where she was lying. It sounded like someone speaking. I asked, "Surprise, Lamia, who are you talking to?" At first I thought she was on the phone, but the sounds were very frightening, like a gurgling throat noise, something struggling to speak. I turned off the stove and went towards the room. When I got closer, the sounds grew louder. It was a strange noise, like someone's voice being forced and held down, unable to cry out. When I opened the door and entered, the sound stopped. Lamia was lying on the bed with her eyes closed. I called her and asked if she had been speaking. Lamia shook her head listlessly. Thinking it was my imagination, I went back to making soup. The night passed like that, and the next day her health improved, but those noises stayed in a corner of my mind. I couldn't believe I had really heard them. Maybe I had imagined it. Time went on, and about 2 weeks passed. I remember it was a Friday, Jummah. I didn't have work that day, and I had taken 2 extra days off because we planned to go to our village. My parents had insisted we bring my wife to the village. I had planned we would leave after Jummah prayer. I told Lamia to cook quickly and pray, and I would come back from the mosque, and then we would eat and leave together. After I left for the mosque and returned home, I rang the bell. No one came to open. I thought maybe Lamia was in the bathroom or praying. I waited 10-15 minutes, rang again, but she still didn't open. I called her phone, but she didn't pick up. I got worried and called a mechanic to open the door. When we unlocked it and entered, I saw my wife lying on the floor. Seeing her so weak, my legs felt cold. I ran to bring water and splashed it on her face. After a while, Lamia recovered consciousness, but her condition was strange. It was the same kind of gurgling voice I had heard that night. Now it came from her mouth. I asked her repeatedly, Lamia, what happened? How did you get like this? She had a strange look in her eyes and strange sounds coming from her throat. I was scared and called my mother and told her everything. My mother immediately told me to bring a glass of water, recite Surah Fatiha 7 times over it, blow into it and sprinkle it on Lamia's face and make her drink. I did as she said and sprinkled the water on Lamia's face. Lamia then suddenly returned to awareness and looked at me in surprise, asking what has happened and why I was worried. I asked what had happened. Lamia said she remembered nothing except that she intended to pray and suddenly everything went dark. When she opened her eyes, she saw me standing there worried. I told her maybe she fainted from fatigue and there was nothing to fear. When I later took Lamia to the doctor, I received a very joyful news for me. I learned I was going to be a father. When I told my parents, they went crazy with happiness. When my wife and I arrived in the village during the Eid celebration, we were received like royalty. But as soon as we entered the house, Lamia suddenly fell to the floor again. She began thrashing on the ground as if a fish had been dragged out of water. She flailed arms and legs, and white foam came from her mouth.
My father urgently called the staff and a doctor. When the doctor gave her an injection, she calmed and slept. The house, which had been full of joy moments before, was now tense and worried. Only my sister-in-law seemed untroubled. She even smiled at Lamia's state. At that moment, a thought occurred to me. Maybe my sister-in-law was still angry with me because I hadn't married her sister. I understood why she behaved as she did, so I let it go for the time being. After Lamia's condition settled a bit, I asked her if anything similar had happened before the marriage. She said no, never. She said she felt very weak and had been having very strange dreams at night for some time. Hearing that, I was startled and asked what kind of dreams. Lamia said she didn't know why, but it felt like someone was burying her in a grave. In the dream, there were 4 or 5 strange women standing around the grave. Their faces were terrifying and their eyes rolled around. I didn't fully understand everything Lamia said, but I understood that she was having very disturbing dreams. My mother kept stroking her head and trying to calm her, reciting prayers and blowing on Lamia, but it seemed to make her condition worse. I told my parents not to worry and to go rest in their house. I would take care of Lamia. They left us alone and I stayed with Lamia in the house. I asked Lamia again what had happened. She was very weak and almost couldn't get up from bed. My mother and the other women in the house brought her food often. I didn't tell my in-laws about Lamia's illness because I didn't want them to worry. My mother advised me, Farhad, she is not well. How will you handle her alone in the city with your office work? You should take leave and stay here with her for a while. We're all here. I liked my mother's advice and took leave from the office. I really had no other good option. Leaving Lamia with her elderly parents wouldn't be good because she was their only child and they were too old to care for her. There were many staff members in the village anyway, so I thought the village environment might give Lamia some relief. One night I woke up and again heard those old sounds, those suppressed cries. When I turned, I saw Lamia sitting on the bed and the gurgling sounds were coming from her. I called to her and asked if she was okay and why she was up. She gave no response, only strange gurgling noises, not exactly screams, more like a whistle. I put my hand on her shoulder and she suddenly shook and pulled away. I repeatedly asked if something was wrong and suggested if she felt uncomfortable we could return to the city. Suddenly she looked at me and in a strange voice said, "Why did you marry her?" I was stunned. I wondered why that voice would come from her and why she would ask such a thing. I said, "What are you saying, Lamia? What do you mean, why did I marry you?" Then Lamia said, "Divorce her now or we will kill her." As soon as she said that, Lamia fainted. I hurried to my mother and told her everything. She became extremely worried and said, "I think this is not an ordinary disease. Something magical is involved." Hearing magic, I became deeply concerned. The next morning, Lamia said, "Let's leave this place. I feel very uneasy here." I realized that since we arrived here, her condition had gotten worse. With my parents' permission and prayers, we returned to the city. For a while, things were okay in the city, although occasionally Lamia's condition would deteriorate. Alhamdulillah, nothing catastrophic happened. Then our son was born. Even after his birth, some problems continued. Lamia would sometimes faint and make strange sounds. Then things would return to normal. Everything escalated when our son was about 11 months old. One day I returned home and heard my son screaming. I ran in and saw my son on the sofa, and my wife had her hand around his throat. Seeing that, I was horrified. I rushed to pull my son away, but I couldn't free him. I grew up in the village and am fairly strong, and my wife is from a wealthy family and not physically weak, but I couldn't get my son out of her grip. Suddenly, a thought occurred to me. I started reciting Surah Fatiha. As I recited, Lamia's body slowly relaxed. She fell unconscious back on the bed. At that moment, my only thought was saving my son. Thank God my son survived. I didn't pay much attention to Lamia after that, thinking that maybe I had arrived in time. I shudder to think what might have happened had I been late. When Lamia regained consciousness and I scolded her, she looked at me blankly as if she didn't understand. She had no memory of what happened. After that, more events unfolded one by one. The next day, I saw blood splattered around the house, on the walls of every room, and even in the bathroom. 2 days later, late at night, while my wife and I were sleeping, we heard a sound from the empty room next to ours. We ran and opened the room, and what we saw filled our eyes with shock. Our little boy was in that room's bed. How did he get there? And why was he crying? Suddenly, Lamia said, "Look, there's a girl and a boy standing here." When she said that, I searched the room carefully but saw no one. Lamia said the children were saying that an aunt was standing there who looked very terrifying. The woman Lamia described was the same one we had seen in her dreams. I should mention, ever since these events started with Lamia, since she first tried to strangle our son, I had been working from home. I could not leave the child alone with her. I was certain we needed help.
When I told friends about this, we found an elderly man, a spiritual healer. I took my wife and child to him. His house was crowded, and when our turn came, he said to me, "You don't need to say anything. I can see what is happening in your family. This is magic, and the magic is coming from your own family." I asked what the cure was. He said, "First, we must expel everything that had been fed to my wife as part of the bewitchment." He gave some talismans and told me to mix them into water and make my wife drink. She would vomit, and everything the magic had been fed to her would come out. I had never done such a thing before and didn't fully understand, but I followed his instructions. When Lamia drank the water with those talismans, she began to vomit violently. For 4 days, she kept vomiting off and on. Sometimes clumps of hair came up, sometimes strange bones. The vomit was bizarre and had an indescribable smell. During that time, strange sounds came from the whole house. Sometimes it sounded like someone weeping in a corner, sometimes footsteps on the roof at night, and people jumping. The sounds were so terrifying, no brave person could stomach them. We slept with our little boy that night. One morning, we found the furniture in the outside room overturned. At first, we thought thieves had come, but the doors were still locked as before. The old man had given us talismans for 5 days, and many things happened during those 5 days. When we went back to the healer, he was in despair and said that the person doing the magic was furious and had gone mad. He said he had been trying to break the spell, but the sorcerer kept doing more magic. He said he had to confront that cruel person directly, and then if the magic didn't stop, the sorcerer might even lose his life. He then gave me another 100 talismans and said I had to perform certain rituals for 10 days, using smoke and incense throughout the house. I left all my office work and focused entirely on this. The safety of our children mattered most to me. Those 10 days were terrifying beyond words. Each day something happened. Sometimes black cats would appear near the child and vanish when I approached. Sometimes I would see a woman behind me in the bathroom mirror, the same woman Lamia had described. But the old man had warned us this would happen and told us to be patient. We kept reciting the Quran constantly in the house. Our child had marks like handprints on his body, as if someone had hit him very hard. I had to wake up at night, and gradually my condition deteriorated, but I couldn't break down in front of my wife and child. Lamia became very weak, like all the blood had been drained from her. Her parents were worried and made arrangements for different treatments from time to time. By God's grace, we survived those 10 days somehow. Just when we finished treatment, we received news from my village. My sister-in-law, Bab here, had died, and her death was terrible. I realized the reason behind her death. The old healer had told me that when the magic is sent back to the person who cast it, the result can be death. My brother later told me what happened to her before she died, and I was 100% convinced the person who did the magic was none other than my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law and my brother knew nothing about this. They were completely innocent. But that woman, blinded by vengeful rage to satisfy her own ego, tried to destroy my well-set family and even tried to kill my wife. In the end, the result was the opposite. I hate that woman so much that I have not forgiven her, and I never will. She tried to make my life hell. In the end, hell was her fate. Through Ghost USA, I ask everyone, please share this event with as many people as possible. Get the word out. After my sister-in-law's death, by God's infinite mercy, about 7 months have passed, and we are all happy and living well. My wife's health, alhamdulillah, has recovered, and the child is growing. A few days ago, when I went to the village house, I had to enter my brother's room for some reason, I think to fetch a charger or something. I reached behind the bed toward the switch and felt something hard with my hand. When I pulled it out, I saw it was the little hair basket belonging to my wife, the very basket that had disappeared from our house. Why was that basket in my brother's room? If I hadn't found it, I might have had some lingering doubt that maybe my sister-in-law had not done such a thing. But after seeing the basket, all doubts vanished.
If you're not afraid, hit subscribe, but if you are, like the video and tell me, are you watching alone or is someone beside you?